host, Kayla Delano, and today we're talking to Carli Lucke. She was a sprinter at Bucknell, and she's going to kick us off with her story today. Would you mind taking us on that journey?
Yeah, sure. So I graduated from Bucknell in 2018. I started as a freshman in 2014. I have done track since I was maybe 13 or 14 years old, signed up in middle school. It was never really like anything that serious. It's kind of everything you do as like a middle schooler. You try out all the sports, and then long story short, I was pretty fast. As time went on, I started learning that I can, actually go far with this. Went into college, went to Division I at Bucknell, became a sprinter. And for me, it wasn't that simple because I had a lot of injuries I had to overcome. And it wasn't until really my junior year, end of my junior year, that I finally started, seeing some of the results I wanted to and developing into that leader that I really wanted to be, and then finishing it out my senior year. Pretty big. It was a long journey, but
Right.
It's well worth it.
I can already tell that there were a lot of layers in that introduction, that there's quite a lot that happened in between all of those different pieces of the puzzle. So this is exciting. We're going to get a chance to dig into those today. I would like to ask you to explain about the first time that you identified as an athlete.
The first time I identified as an athlete, I guess would be when I was pretty young, when I was like maybe 12, playing soccer with all my teammates. That's when I kind of figured out what like sport really was for me. Knowing that like I had friends and teammates to rely on, that kind of thing, growing up together, going through it together, and developing your skill. Is that what you're asking?
Definitely. That how much of that is like, if you couldn't do this tomorrow, would a piece of you be missing? And it sounds like it was, because it was not only the sport itself, but it was also the social aspect.
For sure. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you another question.
Yeah.
Throughout your athletic career, I'm sure there were some major transition periods. Can you explain to me those periods of time? Like, when did you realize, hey, this is something pretty major in my life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, I think that I was a junior in high school, and I remember being at my district championship, and I hated stats, I hated the newspaper, I hated anything about, like Carli Lucke, her times. I didn't care. I remember my parents always wanted, like, oh, did you see what so-and-so ran? Like, I never cared about any of that. I just wanted to go out there, run, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember it wasn't until I was the first person from my high school, I believe, to win the 100 and the 200. And I got off, and I remember all the news reporters coming up to me with the mics in my face. And it wasn't until I like walked away from those interviews, and this college coach had approached me, and he was like, "Here's my number. I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I want to let you know that we're really interested in you." And it wasn't until then that I was like, wow, like, you know what I mean? It's like a whole different ballgame now. Like, it's not just me going out here and running in my town, printing some stuff about me. It's like, this is bigger than me now.
Sure. Yeah. That's taking the next step. I'd like to go back to something that you said so interesting about not wanting to know the stats and other people fussing over that. So when you would just go out and run, you wanted to just be the running. Were you focused on like joy of that experience, or it was the speed? It's like you wanted to be out ahead of everybody. Can you remember what was maybe a primary motivation? How come you didn't care about all that other stuff that other people seem to think is pretty important?
I think it was pressure. Like, I felt so much pressure because, like I said, growing up playing soccer and just being with my friends and having fun, track like was something I was so good at compared to, I don't mean to like sound like that, but we came from a really small town. So for being so fast and like getting all this attention, it made me feel so like insecure, and I didn't want any of that attention. And knowing how like proud it made my dad, it kind of almost made me like mad, because I was like, I'm just running, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just running. I don't want the attention. I just want to go out there and run. And then when I would hear about, like, other girls and what they ran, it was just all I wanted to do was go out there, warm up, run my race, and win it. All I cared about was winning, being the best, but, like, not for the spotlight, just for, like, me and my coach at the time. He's the one he was a huge influence on me running Division I college. If it weren't for him, I don't think I'd be in the position I am today. I don't think I'd be out in California. But he was a huge influence on me as well. He just constantly was like, go out there and run. You're fast. You're gifted. Just go out there, have a good time. He'd give me a huge hug afterwards. And it was just like, it was part of my life. Wake up, go to track, practice, run your race, win it, get a high five, go to bed.
Nice.
Like, that's all I cared about. You know what I mean? It wasn't like stats. It wasn't anything like that.
But it does sound like a kind of a combination of both some internal and external rewards. It's like having special relationships and having that gratifying feeling, yet not the same internal and external rewards that people would assume.
Right.
Like that I wanted the I guess, recognition that the newspaper brings.
I never cared about the recognition. It actually, like, would upset me. I, like, couldn't stand it because I came from such a small town, and, like, knowing that was the only thing they were going to talk about, and that was the only thing, and going to school, and I knew that a lot of my peers would, like, look at me a certain way and be like, oh, there she is again. Like, I couldn't stand that, but I did like to win, of course.
Yeah. It feels good to win,
winning,
of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you feel about sharing some of those other parts of things that you kept or gave up along the way?
High school related or college or?
Just because you had kind of taken such a primary focus toward sport, right? That it kind of came at the expense of other things.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I remember, like I mentioned, it was when, like, I started actually winning races. There was a girl on my team who no one had touched her in years, and she was the fastest, best thing, and I finally started beating her. And it wasn't until I was beating her that I had started getting pressures from the coaches and my parents and everyone that, you know, like, you're good. You're going to be good. But I love to sing, and I've always loved singing, and running to me at the time never really meant anything because it was just, I was fast, but I didn't care. And so I remember being like, I don't want to run anymore. All I want to do is sing. I want to be involved in the arts. And it was just a huge pushback from my family and my friends. And it was just basically, it was either sports or not sports. And it was this huge push for, you know, you're so talented, why would you not take the opportunity for free education, for scholarship, for all those things that a lot of people don't have? Like, you have a privilege that so many don't, so you should take advantage of it. And for me, being 15, 16, I was like, I didn't understand it. I was like, I don't want to run. I hate running. That's not fun. Who wants to go out there every day and run? But I didn't see it as an opportunity at the time. I just saw it as, you know, people putting a lot of pressure on me. But now, looking back, I can see, you know, the tough love and how it did give me so many opportunities to get to the position that I am now. But at the time, yeah, it was difficult having to be like, wow, you're good at something, so you have to go after it because it opens a lot of doors for you, and leaving behind a lot of things that mean a lot to you at the same time. Yeah.
It feels like an interesting experience of interpreting those messages too, because when people say, but you're really good at this, it's like, but I'm really good at that other thing too. Right. And it's almost like they're placing a value on it.
Right. Well, that's how it is with sports. Sports always is like, but you're so athletic.
Right.
You can go to college, yeah.
So you were talking about how you had this high school experience that, and you knew that college was going to be your next step. And you also already mentioned that you had some injuries. Can you tell us what that was like?
Yeah. So coming in college, I actually had no prior injuries in high school. So I was used to just, like I said, like showing up, running, doing what I had to do. And when you get to college, you're living in dorms. You're regulating your own schedules with classes, and you're not coming home to meals made by your parents. And there's just so many different factors. There's your social life that you've never had compared to high school, at least for me. And there was so many different factors playing in. And of course, you have a new coaching staff, which I'll say now, I loved my coaches. They're the best coaches I ever had. But coming in as a freshman and having your normal coaches of 4+ years, you think they're everything, and now you have to get used to an entirely different style, and you're pushing your body harder than you ever had. So yeah, I had like 4 hamstring pulls in total, 2 on each leg, and I just remember the pressures even of
all at the same time.
No, all at different times.
Oh,
so I had
so painful.
Multiple different hamstring pulls. Some were super light, and so that's why they were overlooked as like, you can still run, but our sport is purely running as fast as you possibly can and being the strongest and fastest person you can. And that's where, you'd get the pushback from my friends who are on other teams. Oh, like all you're doing is running 100 meters. And I'm like, yes, as hard and fast as I possibly can. Like, you're going to feel it all. But the pressure of being on scholarship and being a freshman, and you don't want to let down your coaches and your teammates, and so you try, and then you get hurt again, and that was basically the cycle, repeat and repeat. And so sophomore year came around, I was struggling. This is where I guess the identity part would come in, kind of, because I'm like, I want to have fun. I'm in college, and I'm injured, and I'm not allowed to compete. How do I balance all of this? And I'm only 19. And so that was a huge struggle, trying to figure all that out. And I think I kind of got confused on what to do there, and wasn't taking my rehab as seriously. I was taking my social life more seriously. And that's when that all played into who I was. And I started questioning what my core values were, because I was like, I'm an athlete at heart. I should be taking this seriously. And then I struggled with that all of sophomore year. Come summer of junior year, I was like, I'm going to give this one last shot. I'm going to rehab as hard as I possibly could. I spent my entire summer, all morning, all afternoon, just rehabbing day after day. And I came back junior year, and that's when it all paid off. And I was like, this is what I need to do. And
you got down to business.
Coming back to our field of sports psychology, I remember being on the phone with my dad and being like, I can't believe all I've overcome. And I wish that I had someone to talk with me through it. You know what I mean? Give me some advice or just some tips on how to stay mentally strong through those times where you want to give up, because we weren't allowed to travel with our team if we were injured. But we also weren't allowed to go out or go socialize or do anything.
Okay.
So we were in a prison.
Sure.
At 19 years old, all your other friends are out there having fun and doing all these things and posting pictures.
But cut off.
And I wasn't allowed to compete or go have fun and just sit there. And it just became a very depressing cycle. And that's where I struggled a lot with, what do I really want? And that's when I decided I'm going to give this one last shot. And if I can't come back, I'll give up. But I did, and that's where I figured out how mentally strong I was, and I was like, I need to get into this field. I need to be that advocate for athletes who, are going through something where they feel like they're having an identity crisis, or they're going through injury, or
you traveled that road.
Yeah, it was horrible, and I wish I just had someone who can give me a little bit of guidance.
So are you saying then that you didn't have a lot of those pep talks that were helping to pull you through this? You figured out a lot of that on your own through mistake and trial and error, and then hey, I'm not really happy in this position.
For sure. Yeah. Especially my first 2 years, it was very, if you're hurt, you're hurt, figure it out, get better. Because we have many other people that will take your position. So you're basically a number, your name on the roster until you can actually prove your name. You don't really mean that much. And I feel like that a lot of people could relate to that, and I think that still is an ongoing thing in sports in general. And I felt that for sure. And especially, like I said, coming from a small town where, although I didn't want my name in the spotlight and I didn't care, it always was, and I constantly was being talked about. And then going to Division I college, getting hurt, and no one cares whatsoever.
Wow.
It's like, who am I? You start freaking out, I don't matter. So yeah, it was very much so get better or don't.
Yeah,
and we have new people coming in, and it was all me. I was like, I have to at least try and know that I tried, and if it doesn't work, then it's just my body. It doesn't work, but I wasn't gonna just like give up on myself, kind of thing. But then coming back junior year, and then going through that whole process, and I think my coaches saw that. I got really close with them. I think a lot of the girls saw it. The whole culture of our team changed. Fast forward into senior year, I became captain, and a lot of just different shifts happened. And we got a sports psychologist on our team. He made a big difference. We started doing a lot of one-on-ones with him. A lot of our teammates reached out to him. He gave a lot of speeches. He traveled with us. But that was the first our team had ever seen.
Yeah.
A sports psychologist was 2 years ago. So you can see how new it all is.
Oh, totally.
So I'm sure people are still struggling with it now. But like I said, that's why I was like, I want to go into this field. I want to be able to, be there.
But I think what's really neat, though, is that you already had started that turn, that 180. You had started that. I mean, so that was like you had found an inner strength. I mean, were you maybe like reading books or like looking to other people?
Yeah, I started reading a lot, and I started researching. And I remember like that idea of grit and mental toughness started coming out and things like that. And I started reading up on that a lot. And then our coaches brought in, speakers and things like that. And I've always been into psychology and how the mind works and therapy and things of that sort. And I was like, if athletes could have this, because we don't realize the amount of pressures they have. You look at them and you're like, oh, they just go out there and play games. And it's like, there's so many layers to it. If they could have someone like that, then. And then I realized it's an emerging field, and here we are now.
Yes.
Talking about it.
It's a beautiful field of study. I'm passionate about it too, but I love that you are bringing in so many facets of it. From being in that position where it was a super prominent, everyone looking at you, and then like, okay, figure it out. Other people want your position. Get out of here.
Oh, yeah. You go from small town to the big leagues. You're just a number when you're there. So, yeah, being able to have these outlets to talk to, I think, would be so beneficial for so many athletes.
So we've kind of covered a range of people between parents and coaches and people that are on your staff. So I actually am curious if you could name, who do you consider most influential to you?
In my entire athletic career?
I know that's difficult, isn't it? Over your whole life, who would it be? But maybe, let's say, over your athletic career.
Over my athletic career, I would say it was my dad. Because whether good or bad, he was constantly the one pushing me for sports. And like I said, whether it's good or bad, I know that, I could be good at a lot of things, but it did open so many opportunities for me. But he was always the one, because he never got to fulfill he played baseball in college for a year and a half, I believe, and then he had to stop so he could help out working and help his parents out with some things at home. So for him, he was always so passionate about it, and having no boys, he was like, I just want to see my girls do something. I think he saw that in me, and he saw the potential, and he pushed, and he may have pushed a lot harder at sometimes than I wish he would have, but it did get me to a good place.
And you could appreciate it in hindsight.
I
Probably
can appreciate
not at the time.
it now, but yeah, at the time it was difficult. Yeah, I wanted to sing. I didn't care about sports. I just wanted to sing, but he saw it in me, and he pushed.
So your dad was the one who comes out forefront. So the other key parts of your support system?
It would be for sure my high school coach. He went above and beyond. I could remember being in high school and getting called out of class and getting told I have to go to his office, and he would just be going over things with me. In colleges, he'd be sending out emails nonstop to all these different colleges, putting my stats out there. You got to come watch this girl. You got to come watch this girl. Even though I wasn't as good as half the girls in the state, he'd be like, you got to see her potential. Like, when you see her, you'll know. And they would just show up, and he was just the biggest, outside of my dad, like, massive supporter. And even so, when I finally got to college, up to this day, I still hear from him every couple of weeks. He he would either show up to my meets or he's constantly checking in. How are you doing? Not even about sports, just how's everything else going? What's new in your life? Like, he's always been that one person that's not in my family that's just like, I'm here for you and I want to see you do so well. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'd say him.
Is that the special relationship between Coach and Carli, or he's a coach like that to everybody? That sounds like the emotional investment is too big to handle.
Yeah, I would say he's got a few, because he's also a football coach. He's got a few guys he's close with, but I would say we had a pretty special relationship, and we still do, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of belief in you is so powerful.
Yeah, it was.
That's really cool. So I wanted to ask you about, so you were competing and it was coming back to you. You were injury-free. Yeah. You're having a fantastic, powerful season. The team has turned around. Mm-hmm. Like, you're seeing these gains. What kind of thoughts of, like, I'm not going to do this forever? I remember you saying that you had this shot. I'm going to give it everything I have. Were you kind of seeing a finish line per se?
So at first, no, because I had so I'd been hurt for 2 years. I finally come out. It's my time. I'm doing so well. I'm so strong. There's not a day I wake up and I'm like, oh, it kind of hurts. No, I'm like, I am on top of everything. I'm good to go. Things were just lining up, and I knew I'm, like, reaching my potential. It wasn't until that season ended and going into senior year that I was like, all right, this year's coming to an end come 7 months. Uh-huh. What do I do from here on out? And that's when I'm like, I know I want to be involved in sports psychology, but there's very few programs. It's very hard to get in. Mm-hmm. Am I going to do that? What am I going to do if that doesn't work out? And I'm like, I just can't. I knew I'm not good enough to compete professionally. Also, my body is completely shot. I feel like a lot of athletes can relate to that coming onto their senior year. Even if you're strong, it doesn't matter. You've competed since you were little. Your joints hurt. And
sure.
My times were nowhere near what other girls were. So I knew that just wasn't even
okay. So that felt like a natural
I already knew college was the end for me.
Okay.
But I was going to give it all I had and end college on a great note. But then what happens next? I could not see myself. Like, I was having serious conversations with myself. Like, I cannot see myself doing anything that doesn't involve sports. And for me, it was so hard because it's like, all right, so what does that include? Coaching? Mm-hmm. What? Sports marketing? But what is that? Because I don't even know. I'm just saying that because it says sports. Things like that. It's like, I don't know. And everyone's talking about, oh, I want to be a doctor. I'm going to law school. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And I'm like, I'm just an athlete. Like, mm-hmm. all I've known forever is run, win, do good, be a captain, organize events for my team, and win championships.
Right.
And now I just go back to square one. And, like, who am I? And so I was struggling with that, but I had gotten into the program here at Long Beach State, which was huge. But even so, I'm like, I still need to be around it. Like, I need to be around it. So I reached out to the track and field team here, and that's when I talked to Coach Andy Scythe, and he was like, we'd love to have you help out. You sound like you'd be a great asset. And for me, like, I'm still working with the team now, going on my second year, and they're everything to me. It helps me still feel that way, but I think without it, I don't know. I think it would still be difficult mm-hmm. because I identify so much with just competing every day, practicing every day, dedicating yourself physically to, like, the sport and the team. It's hard for me to think what it would be like not to be a part of that anymore. Even after we graduate with sports psych, like, I don't even know if I'm ready to give up coaching then because mm-hmm. I feel so strongly a part of the team.
Well, maybe you shouldn't. Not that I'm here to give you advice on your next steps, but I think you have a very special empathy for all those athletes that are out there. I don't know how much they absorb that you know where they're at and what that's like.
Yeah.
But I also, I think it's really cool that you talk about the level of investment that you are, that it's everything at that point in time, and that you willingly gave yourself to it, but that has a particular result. Like, the consequence of it is so exhilarating. Like, I've given this everything I have, and it's had this amazing high.
Yeah.
And that you already were cognizant of, though, like, this isn't going to be forever.
Right. But at the same time, like, that's the one thing that I try to teach my athletes now. The one takeaway I have being a coach is you're not your sport. You're your own person. Mm-hmm. You just play your sport. You are a jumper. Mm-hmm. You jump for fun. You are not a jumper. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That kind of thing. Like, it's not who you are. It's what you do. Because for me, when I had gotten injured, that's where all my struggles came from, because I was like, who am I? What do I do without being able to compete every day? And even the first year after transitioning, even being a coach, it was kind of difficult, because it's like, I can't just jump in. I'm no longer part of the team. Mm-hmm. I'm like outside looking in. So the big thing I try to talk with them about now is, you know, like, this is what you do. It's not who you are. Mm-hmm. And try to, as hard as it is, try to separate those two things and know your worth outside of the sport. Because for me, I didn't for so long. All I knew most of high school was that I'm good at winning. As cocky as it sounds, but for real, like, that's all I knew. And then getting hurt, I kind of lost myself. I found it again, and then I had to learn to find who I was outside of that in the end anyway. So it's like, it all comes to an end. Even if you go on professionally, it all stops.
True.
So knowing your worth outside of the sport, it's so important, I think.
So as we've come through your journey and heard about these different experiences, I'm curious if you can recall if there was maybe a pivotal moment where you saw yourself as more than this single identity, even though you had pushed so much into being an athlete.
Right. So it was, like I'd mentioned, never really having been injured in high school and coming in as a freshman with so many expectations. I remember looking at the record board and already have running times that have been up there or close to, and knowing I'm going to smash it. Like, no question in my mind, I'm going to do it. And then going through, you know, so many different injuries and trying to balance social life with class, with competing and practicing and nutrition. That's another thing too I just want to add in, is I think a lot of people aren't aware of what it's like to be a first year in college as an athlete and have a meal plan in the cafeteria, not being able to cook for yourself and have to, you know, figure out what things to eat on a limited diet.
Okay.
I just wanted to throw that out there. We don't have to add that in or anything, but it was crazy when your options for the night were pizza or rice or a salad bar. And you're supposed to take that and put that into your body and use it as fuel to be a Division I athlete for a couple days. And I think too, like, that was a huge thing because I had such a specific meal plan I had followed all of high school, and then boom, I get to college.
And then no one's talking about it or offering you advice.
It's just like, here's some pizza, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna eat the pizza. It was, anyways, I just want to throw that in there. But
that definitely matters.
Yeah.
Plenty of people are faced with that choice, and whether or not they're doing that wisely or with any guidance.
It was wild to try to figure out. And then, so as I had mentioned, getting injured, it wasn't until the spring I was still struggling with an injury. But as a freshman with a lot of expectation, I think a lot of people, a lot of my staff and teammates had thought I was kind of faking my injury or babying it, because I wasn't running the times, quote unquote, that I should have been. But it was because I had been having so many injuries, and it was our first meet of outdoor season, and I just was like, my leg is killing me, and I know it's gonna snap. I know it's not good. It was wrapped up. There's videos of me running up and down the track with bandages from my ankle up to my shoulder. That's how much it was wrapped.
Wow.
And my whole family was there, and I was like, I know it's just gonna snap right in front of them. And I get in the blocks, boom, gun goes off, 3 steps in, I just tumbled. It just ripped in half. And that's when my coach came over, picked me up off the track, and he was just apologizing over and over again. I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know. And I just went in the tent, and I was crying, and I remember just being like, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep getting injured. And So for me, yeah, that's when I realized, like, maybe being an athlete, that's not who I'm supposed to be. Maybe I'm supposed to be something else. And
your breaking point was physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. You like hit all of the...
At that point, it was so physical. I was just like, I cannot keep getting injured like this. And then that summer was more mental. That's when I started struggling with the controllables, what I can control, what I can't. Couldn't control my injuries, so let me control what I can eat and put in my body to help me, maintain this physique I'm supposed to maintain coming in. And then, of course, I took it to an extreme because I'm an athlete and I want to be the best, and so I perfect what I eat and that kind of thing. And coming back sophomore year, I started struggling a lot with my body weight, which was super low for what it should be. And my strength had gone down. I thought I was healthy because I felt like I could run. But then mentally I was struggling with a lot of other things. One was, food and what I was putting in my body, and I became obsessive over it. And then the other was fear of injury. Mm-hmm. So I'm afraid of getting injured, but what I'm doing to myself is causing me to get injured because I'm not feeding myself properly to recover how I need to, but I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. And I had another point where I remember starting to put my spikes on for the first time in like 6 months.
Wow.
And I just took a massive panic attack, and I went home and my roommate was like, you can't keep doing this to yourself, like you're not okay, you're doing too much. And she took me down to the field house, and I just went into my coach's office and I sat down, and I was like, he just listened to me cry, and I just cried for like a good 10 minutes. I didn't even say anything, and he's like, it's all right, like, and then he was like, whenever you're ready, just tell me what you want to say. And I was like, I have been struggling with so much, and I feel like you guys don't care, and like I'm always hurt and no one cares. And as I had mentioned, it's just you're so used to being a number instead of who you are. Mm-hmm. And then that's when he had finally just been like, you need to take care of yourself outside of this sport. I care about you as a person. Like at the end of the day, track is track. It's a race. Mm-hmm. Whether you win or lose, it doesn't define who you are. And like that's so important. And for me, it didn't really register because
that's a whole other paradigm.
That's all it meant to me. But over the years, I finally understood where he was coming from. But as I was kind of mentioning to you earlier, just he started explaining to me, like, you need to start doing things for you that don't define you as an athlete or how you look or how much you weigh or how fast you are. And he would just start checking in on me, like, how's your day going? Like, what are you up to? Like, what's going on? How's class? Like, what's new in your life? How are your parents? And just, having that little bit of, not push, just, like, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, reassurance that, like, I care about you. That was all the difference for me. It started just making me, want to come around and have a good time and have fun, whether or not because my whole sophomore year, that whole year, I didn't do well, but I still stuck around because I was like, I feel like I'm cared about and I feel like I'm wanted. And that's what led me into my next year of finally being successful, was just sticking around.
Wow. That's an amazing rebuilding process. Like that the recovery, it seems very holistic. That it was like you recovered in so many ways of getting more sure of yourself and understanding who you really were and what you really needed and how to answer those needs. That's really cool. Do you feel like you have a way to tune into that when you see an athlete that maybe needs a similar conversation?
I guess kind of just reflecting back a little bit on my story, I'll give them a little bit of insight on, like, I've been here before kind of thing. And then, like I was mentioning, as far as, because especially in track and field, you do see some athletes trying to shave seconds off their time by controlling how much they eat or their weight or things that are outside of just how much they practice and things like that. And that can be worrisome, but just letting them know that, at the end of the day, if you want to be the best, you have to treat yourself and feed yourself and like do all the necessary steps to get there the right way, even as hard as it seems, and we're all behind you and we're all here for you. And I mean, like, I'll check in with my athletes. I'll just send them texts if I know they're having a bad day. I'll send them a text later that night, like, hope you have a good night, like, let me know if you need anything, like, just things like that. Or the next day I'll be like, what's going on, like, just small things to let them know, like, you're there for them outside. How's your family doing?
Yeah, that it's really genuine and not, like, just sport deep.
It just, I think the little things can help, and knowing that I've been there, and they know I've been there recently too. Yeah, that's the difference, is that I just got out 2 years ago. So a lot of them always say, like, you're so young and this and that. I'm like, yeah, I am, but I was just there, so I'm here. I know what it's like. If you ever need advice, like, I'm right here.
I love it. I hope that they're really taking advantage of how close you are to that. Maybe a recording like this would help something like that.
I hope so.
So it does make me curious, though, that sometimes we just need to figure things out, right?
Right.
So how much of the preemptive conversation is worthwhile? Like you said, you get there freshman year and you have all these options in front of you and you just think, I need to go study. I'm just having cereal for dinner. And you are thinking, like, that's not actually the best choice. So, I mean, that's just an instance.
Yeah.
So my question is, do you feel like it's a good idea to initiate those conversations and have them, I don't know, maybe write up a plan, or are they talking to somebody?
I think it's important to lay it out there and let them know your things are different.
Okay.
Mom and Dad aren't making you food anymore every night.
Yeah.
You're going to be making it on your own, or you're going to have to make your own choices. You're allowed to stay up as long as you want or as little as you want, but all of these things are going to play in. I think that's all you can do to start out, because, you know, you start with the, like, imposing rules and things like that, and they're going to, at least from my experience, I'm going to be like, I just got free. I just got out of home. Like,
don't micromanage my food.
Don't tell me what to do. But they'll see. And as a lot of my athletes, within 1 year, they're like, I can't be eating like this all the time. Like, I've put on a couple pounds and I can feel it. I'm not as strong. And it's like, right. So we just have to make these little changes. I think it's important that, you know, they'll learn. And if you want it bad enough, that's what I've learned. Like I said, you know, like for me, when I was going through my struggles with food, I came to a point where my weight was so low, I knew I wasn't strong enough because my weight was so low. I knew that I wasn't recovering because I wasn't feeding myself properly. And it was like, do you want to be good or do you want to look a certain way? And I just was finally like, I care more about being the best athlete I can be and being the best captain I can be for my teammates, and I'm going to fuel myself how I'm supposed to. And with that comes self-love, and you finally start enjoying the process, and you're like, I'm strong. I'm winning. I'm a good example for my teammates. And like I said, I just think it's important for athletes to kind of navigate it themselves, but it does help, of course, having support along the way and, you know, someone there to be like giving them advice. But they're independent. They're finally in college. It's time to make some decisions.
That is a great nuanced answer.
Sorry.
That you want to be there to help, but you can't do it for them.
You can't do it for them.
I totally agree. That's extremely important. But I don't know if everybody can walk that path and learn it quickly without, you know, burning themselves.
Which is why it's important to have someone there to let them know, but you can't push them. They gotta want it.
Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about maybe you won't be coaching with your track team anymore, does that kind of have a timeline on it, or you might do it for a while? You're just open to options?
That's just, I guess it's because coming to the end of our master's program, and like knowing that I'm going to start applying for consulting jobs.
Okay.
It's whether or not I want to go through another year staying coaching, or possibly taking a new job consulting and finally diving into that fully, or trying to balance the two. I'm just not sure. I think it's something I have to wait until I start getting opportunities and start seeing what I can balance and what I can't. But I really can't see myself giving up coaching and like letting that world go. It's so hard for me.
Oh, I hope you don't. It sounds really valuable on like you say, that with the coach that was so influential for you, that it's valuable on many, many levels.
I know.
for them and for you as well, like to get a chance to give. It's straight from your heart.
That's what I hope.
Maybe off the record. It's not about money.
Of course, no. Trust me, it ain't.
So if we could just consider for a moment, if you could give advice to your younger self, I don't know, I'm actually wondering, should we consider like your 13-year-old self or your 18-year-old self? There are different iterations of Carli that we could visit. But maybe let's say before freshman year, maybe you're just graduating high school. What's some words of wisdom that you could offer?
I'm just graduating high school?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I like how vivid that got.
Because I'm picturing myself. And, like, I was a know-it-all. And I knew it all. And I was like, I'm just going to go into college and be the best athlete there ever was. I guess it would just be that I don't know. Sorry, I'm taking a couple seconds to think about this.
That's okay.
I mentioned it earlier. I think self-love is so important, and it's talked about a lot today, and sometimes some people may think it's overused, or everyone's like, be happy and things like that, but I really do think, I was so wrapped up in who I was as an athlete, and until I got injured, like, my whole world was turned upside down. I never thought in a million years I would be the girl who struggled with an eating disorder, or that I would be the girl that wasn't the best, or I was the girl that, like, no one even knew was on the team. I never thought that would be me.
Does that mean that your self-love didn't have room for mistakes? Is that maybe what you're saying?
Yeah, I guess so. It was just like I didn't even know who I was other than who everyone thought I was. Just a girl who ran track who was good, and that's it. And I think if I could tell my 18-year-old self, it would just be to, like, love myself, all parts of myself, outside of athletics, outside of music, outside of what my parents thought or my town. Just, like, live my life, be happy, make choices that make me happy at the end of the day. And I know it sounds so general, but
no, I think those are definitely words that can guide a life, with some perspective.
Yeah. Sorry. I don't know.
Not at all. Don't be sorry.
Just like, I don't know.
No, thank you. We really enjoyed hearing your stories today. I think that we've learned a lot. We've traveled
Thanks for having
just a
me.
little bit of some steps in your shoes, your fast spikes. So we're going to close off our second episode. Carli, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Me.
All right, bye-bye.